We are approaching the Materia Cup in Castleberry, Florida. I hope I said that correctly because I don't have it pulled up anymore. So being that's going to be this Saturday and Sunday, we wanted to kind of take another look at where the meta is at and kind of just do a quick meta check on things before we go into this Materia Cup. Now, I think we've said in the past, this is going to be our last exposure before we go to Chicago at the end of the month. So this is going to be kind of a big one. I guess, do you have any off-the-cuff, like, bold predictions that we're going to see in Florida?
Let's see. I think you're just off the wall.
Yeah, just hot
A
take.
random deck that we might see.
Yeah, hot take.
I think we're going to see the huge. Probably you're going to see Knights, 7 Wool. You're going to see Refia. But what I want to see, which me and you've talked about this, I've talked about playing it, but I'm not good at playing it. It's Leo. That's what I want to see.
Okay. What do you think the winning deck is going to be? Do you think we'll have a repeat of Wool 7, or do you think we'll have a new contender after this cup?
I believe. I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel like there's going to be a strong representation of Knights, Wool 7, and Refia, but well, Bards, whatever. I say Refia because that's the
Right.
main shebang. Whether
Yeah.
you're playing either variant, Refia
Right.
is your goal.
Yeah.
Um, I just have a feeling. I feel the Knights is going to do good for whatever reason.
Okay. I think my hot take at the moment is I think that I think a 4-color deck of some sort, whether it's Refia, 4-color good stuff, uh, something like that. I think that we will probably see a champion playing 4-color.
Yeah, I could see that very much. I just, um, I just have a feeling that Knights is going to be the deck everybody wants to play. I feel like, I just feel like it's going to be higher representation there than the other ones.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I
So I
was
think you'll see more. Yeah.
If you play Final Fantasy TCG, there's a very good chance that you've purchased cards from Nerd Labs already. Nerd Labs has nearly 2,000 completed sales in just over the last 11 months or so, with overwhelmingly positive feedback. We're on TCG Player, but just as a little hint, if you follow the link in the description, there's no price floor when prices are updated on a daily basis. Always happy to support the stack. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah, I was explaining to people last night that I feel like we're going to see a pretty heavy prevalent field of Knights. I would say anywhere from like 30, maybe up to close to 40% of the room could be on Knights.
Yeah.
And then I think another 30, possibly up to maybe, well, no, probably 25 to 30% will probably be on like 4-color. And then I think the rest of the field is going to be your Wall 7 and Samano and some just generic rogue decks that people are trying to make work.
Yeah. That sounds right. I think.
So
That's a pretty good estimate.
yeah, I think with all of that being said, that kind of leads us into the point of our little slideshow here. So I put this together very hastily at work today with not a ton of time, but I tried to make it as presentable as possible so that we could kind of chat about it. First and foremost, Oscar has had zero input on any of the stuff here, so I am encouraging him to rebuttal my opinions, because so far this entire tier list is probably going to be my sole opinion. But this is kind of the idea that we wanted to kind of go over, making a tier list of where we think these decks fall. And this is more so, to me, this slide is going to explain that the tiers don't necessarily mean what I would expect like a generic tier list to mean. What I mean when I say like it's an S tier deck, it's something that is going to be expected heavily at the tournament and expected to perform well. So you're going to need to have answers for these decks. I'm not necessarily saying that these are the best decks, because as time has proven to me in this game, it's not necessarily a good pilot can take a mediocre deck a long way. And it doesn't necessarily work the opposite way. A mediocre pilot can't take a good deck all the way. Like, I think there's a pretty heavy emphasis on good pilots do good, and it's not as much about the deck that they play. Obviously, good deck, good pilot makes a bang out, situation. But I think S tier to me is something that we expect a very heavy prevalence in the room. A tier is something that will perform well but may not show up nearly as prevalent as the S tier decks. I still think that you need to have solid answers to these types of decks. B tier decks are decks that have possibly fallen out of favor but will still perform well in general. Not something that you'd expect to see probably 2 rounds back to back. But answers, of course, would be nice if they overlap with the S and the A tier answers. But I think this is kind of where it gets a little bit muddy in terms of you don't necessarily need to tech in answers for the B tier decks. You kind of just enjoy an answer that you already have in the deck for something in S or A. And then we have the rogue tier, which are decks that definitely have the potential to win, but they're not expected to have a heavy prevalence. So answers to these are nice if they also kind of overlap, but definitely not something that I feel like you're supposed to be teching for at this point. It's kind of hard to tech for them because of how little I imagine you're going to see them. So I guess as we go through this, since this is a lot of my opinion to start with, I would challenge you, Oscar, to if I forget something or if you think that it's going to be heavier in one tier or the other, correct me on it. And B, to the listeners, definitely do that to both of us, because first slide, I tried to say it all. 2 guys who know very little. Trying to set us up here. So, yeah. So S tier. I feel like there are 3 kind of central ideas here. You have Gigawall, Refia Control, and Knights. So Gigawall can kind of be broken down into 2 separate categories. Of course, there's many other flavors of Gigawall out there right now. I didn't include Mono Water Gigawall, even though it is a variant that has seen some decent results in terms of some local qualifiers and stuff like that. But I think when you look at Gigawall, there's kind of 2 overarching categories or archetypes that you really play it in. To me, that would be like the Tyvus and Warrior list. So you're kind of heavily in fire, ice, just generic good 3-drop cards. It could be, Glaciellas. It could be, obviously, you run like Axstar, you run Ward, you run, just the generic trove of good warriors. And then you have Tyvus, who is also going to be able to search said warriors and free play them from the hand. So you kind of have these two engines that work in tandem with each other. You have Gigawall, who just vomits out forwards onto the field, or even backups. And then you have Tyvis, who slow plays them every time you draw them. Yeah, I can just free play it once per turn. Tyvis generates an insane amount of value over time, and Gigawall generates an insane amount of value right now, like when you play it.
Yep.
And then I think in both, I'll talk about Adia and Seifer really quick. So I would call this variant sort of kind of just the variant that we saw in Lexana. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. But in Kansas, the one that actually won, where it's essentially Ice Lightning Gigawall, but obviously you still play the 4-color wool for the special fodder. And the reason that I bring that up is because I think the overarching idea for both Gigawall variants is you still run some sort of Gilgamesh FFBE situation, because it's just generically good, especially when it's so easy to set up. You have 4 colors in your break zone because of 4-color wool, and then you're basically playing 2 more colors for, just extra cards in your deck, and then you have the 7th color as your Warrior of Light himself as the light card. So it they both hinge on Gilgamesh FFBE being kind of like the big bad that, once they drop it, it's the I have to answer it now or I've just lost the game. So I think both kind of function in very similar ways. I think if you're trying to outvalue and outlast your opponent, I feel like the Tyvis and Warriors is kind of the direction that you would prefer. The Adia and Seifer seems a little bit more explosive and a little bit more like I'm just going to overwhelm you with so many effects that you're not going to be able to stop everything. And that's very, very daunting. So I think Gigawall is going to be for sure one of the most popular decks that we'll see in the room, for sure. Refia Control, this is very similar to the way that I set Gigawall up. It's basically 2 separate categories or archetypes that you're looking at here. You have 4-color good stuff, so you're basically just playing just generically good Warrior Light backups, whether it's Kryl, Sarah FFL, Lunith, Air, damn it, I forgot his name, Ingus. Yeah, Ingus, Arc. You're just playing a bunch of Warrior Light backups so that you can basically generate the Refia effect every single turn just out of your backups. Very, very consistent, and I think that there's 2 different ways to play the Refia Control that seem to do really well. Time Magic Barts, of course, is the other archetype that we're going to talk about. This hinges on the Opus 22 Barts being able to essentially search your entire plethora of Warrior Lights and just free play them onto the field. Well, I say free play them, but you pay X and then you search for X and play it onto the field. Free play in terms of I can do it outside of my main phase, which is a very, very powerful thing to do. So having access to some very interesting combo lines where I Bart special for Kryl, I add back Barts, I then tap down backups to immediately Bart special again into a Ferris after I've already, had a few things on the field. And this is all inside, your combo step, or your combat step. You have to do it on your turn. So it's just very interesting. There's a lot of, there's a very high ceiling with the deck, I would say. But they both do kind of resolve around Refia being the main boss monster of the deck. So Refia kind of just slowly eats away at the board. She slowly, tucks things back under the deck, and she put it on top or bottom. So either way, she very much controls the board and generates an insane amount of value for you. Being that it is a Warrior Light deck, of course, 4-color wool is kind of the
The other boss monster and preferred method for myself is the Time Magic Bards, only because if you have a decent opening with Barts and at least one special, you can kind of just special into the 4-color wool and try to set up some wall that can't be broken down until you get set up. So I feel like it gives you a little bit more time. The other interesting thing about the Refia control in general is that they typically play a very high number of EX bursts, and that helps them in both the Wool 7 matchup and the Knights matchup, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I think Refia control is going to be very popular. It made it to finals in Kansas, and if you look at all the local qualifiers that we've had so far, there is some sort of presence with 4-color, some sort of presence somewhere. And then last in S tier for myself is going to be Knights. And truthfully, this may just be like a numbers game because Knights being so heavily favored in the room, being that there are a ton of them, obviously there's going to be a certain number that break through into top cut. I cannot deny the deck is powerful. I've recently started trying to pilot it, and it has some very good lines that it can take. I think it's one of those decks where it's a very good deck and a very good player can take it very far. It puts a lot of pressure on very early. In some cases, it will put pressure on faster than Wool 7, which is scary to say. But the Ramza Karilla combo really sets up a very explosive field in the first turn if they draw the nuts. Like, it's very, very easy to just set up a very strong board and just go to town. It does have a very similar style of effect that Refia does, where you can use Opus 18 Ramza to tap down 4 Knights and blow up something. When it does break a forward, it also deals a point of damage, which is really nice. So it does have some spot removal, but Refia is a little bit less drawbacky. So like in locals last night, I was doing a couple of things that allowed me to prevent my forward from being broken in some sort of way, whether it was bouncing it to the hand or breaking it myself. Like, if I break my own forward or if I remove my forward from the equation, then Ramza doesn't get the damage point off, right? Because that target is now invalid, the entire effect on the stack is invalid. So it will not resolve. Refia doesn't care. Dull 4, choose a forward, put it at the bottom. That's it. Like, I've dulled them for cost, and now when I move into my attack phase, I still get to draw because I still get to reactivate. So there's not as much drawback with Refia as there are Knights. So it's just very, very interesting. Piloting Knights was fun last night, at least. So I guess in terms of these three, did I miss anything? Is there anything that you would also consider S tier? Are any of these not S tier to you?
I think these are all going to be about. You're going to see this in the room. Out of what is it going to be 7 rounds of Swiss? I think you may play one of each of them, or you may play multiple of one of them.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair statement. Yeah, that's definitely fair. All right, so moving on to A tier. So A tier, again, this is something that we expect to perform very well, but probably is not going to fill up the room by any means. But you do need to have some sort of answers for these. So in typical fashion, when you have 4-color decks so prevalent in the meta, as we've seen since Opus 19 at this point, Chaos Arc is going to be a very good meta check. And I specifically want to call it a meta check. I personally am a fan of the deck, but I feel like it's only good in response to a meta, if that makes any sense. I don't feel like it could perform very well on its own. I feel like it's gotten good now because we have such good 4-color decks. But of course, Chaos Arc, there's a couple different ways that you could play it. I think the most common ways are probably the Earth X, meaning Earth Water or Earth Lightning. I think both of those are pretty foundational when it comes to getting into Chaos Arc. Those are really good ways to get into it. And then I also think there's a Mono Lightning variant that does really well. And I think it's interesting because Mono Lightning Chaos Arc to me is kind of the meta check to the meta check. So Chaos Arc obviously thrives on playing Chaos, and Chaos needs to have lots of elements on the opposing side of the field to be able to reduce his cost to make it even more value efficient for me to play him. And if I'm playing Mono Lightning and I go up against a Chaos Arc deck, then at best they're going to have 2 elements on the field, and that's already if I'm established. So I think with Earth Water and or Earth Lightning, you're kind of set up with 3 different elements, so you're giving them the chance to have a slightly more efficient way of playing Chaos. So I don't know. Either way, they both kind of also hinge on the fact that you need a way to recur your arc, meaning Earth Water has access to not only Garnet from Opus 19, but also Une from Opus 19. And then Earth Lightning has access to Man in Black. So Man in Black from, what is that, Opus 17? Really good at essentially when he enters, grab a summon back. When he attacks, grab a summon back. So if I had to pick a variant of Chaos Arc, I think I would still end up choosing the Earth Water, only because I feel like Une is not only impactful as soon as it hits the field, but it's impactful from every turn after that. In the Winter Cup, I played against Sam Toole, and Earth Water Chaos Arc was very, very hard to deal with. Une generates just a ton of value when she enters, bouncing it forward, bouncing it back up, and then she continues to generate value by bringing back your arc, which can then just be brought back and played for free because you control arc or because you control Chaos. So very, very powerful. Next we have Ice Lightning. So this one is a weird one for me because I wouldn't have gone into Opus 22 seeing all the new cards and looked at Ice Lightning and said, wow, that's going to perform well. I guess it does make a little bit of sense. I mean, Ice Lightning has been good. It's been a very well-performing deck for multiple formats now. The difference, though, was very minuscule in terms of main deck cards that it got. Because if you look at the Ice cards and the Lightning cards in Opus 22, I don't think there's very many that just scream, ooh, I gotta play this, right? Like, it's kind of crazy that it's performing as well as it is. And there was a guy in Kansas who had, I think the newest card in his deck was like an Opus 20 card. It might have been an Opus 21. But main deck wise, he didn't have very many new cards at all. They were at least a format old at this point. But the thing is, with Limit Break, you get access to some really, really powerful stuff in both Ice and Lightning. Having access to Cloud, a 4-drop forward. When he enters, you break a forward of 3 or less. Just outright break it. Good. Lightning, for what it's worth, I don't think it's nearly as prevalent, but adding a Lightning summon back from your break zone to your hand is good. And then you have both Surges and Victora. And I think both of those are very powerful because one thing that I feel like Ice Lightning does really well is obviously control your opponent's resources, whether you're playing a heavier discard variant with Whis, Nero, Rufus maybe. or you're playing a more dull freeze where you're focusing more heavily on the Alcid, the Zeramis, the Lightning, and the Sephiroth package. That stuff obviously is there's two kind of, I guess, variants that you would want to look at, but either way, they both do control board resources, and then Surgis and Victora now have both flavors of that. Surgis obviously helps control the board if he can enter and dull something, and then you basically have access to a freeze effect like Alcid, then you've just dull and froze it for effectively 3 CP. So it's really freaking crazy that's all the deck really needed. Victoria, if you're playing the more discard heavy version, when she enters, she's going to gain the 3k because your opponent doesn't have X amount of cards in the hand. I think it's 2. But then when she enters, if they also have a small amount of cards, you get to ping something for like 7k, isn't it? It's good. And having access to those, which I think this is truly what makes it so good, having access to those when you need them is the important part. Just when Ice Lightning already has several names on the field and you draw into 2 dead names, cool. I'll just play something from Limit Break,
Yeah.
And then last in my A tier list was another 4-color deck, and I chose to keep this one separate because I think it operates in a slightly different fashion than Refia is not the end goal for Soiree. Soiree is still, by all means, a 4-color good stuff deck, but it's a different archetype all in and of itself. Amber searches Shinju. Shinju basically color fixes your entire lineup of Soirees, and then you have just this plethora of EX bursts. And I think that's what makes it so good right now, is because our S tier decks, 2 of the S tier decks at least, have a very strong aggro game. Then all of your EX bursts that you get by just playing Soirees help you basically stall out, whether it's gaining value or dealing something damage with Elvis, or what's the lightning one? Merrill?
Merrill, yes, the cat.
Doesn't she like outright break something?
I believe so. Yes.
So yeah, and like it's interesting that like you have all these effects that help you in multiple facets, whether I'm playing it onto the field, whether I'm hitting it off EX burst. I think it's got a very interesting set of tools that it can use. And then on top of that, you add in 4-color wall, you add in Fire Winds of Dane, you add in just these generically good cards that help you maintain your board presence and your control over the board, that it helps you seal the deal a lot of times. I think in general, though, it suffers a little bit worse than the Refia control, just because I think Refia is just a better boss monster at the end of the day. And I think the Warrior Light package has I almost want to call it just a power crept toolbox, because I think the things that it can do are similar in fashion to Soiree, but I just think that they're several sets ahead, obviously. I mean, Soiree was released in 16, and Refia's 3 sets later, and you can tell that some of the effects that we're getting in Warrior Light are just outright power crept versions, or just better versions of the Soirees. So I guess in terms of A tier, A, did I miss anything? B, do you disagree?
I agree with what you have up here. I just don't know, which it may not belong here, but the mono ice aggro discard, I believe that can be seen, but like as it says right here, you need to have answers to these decks. I don't think nobody has an answer to mono ice discard, because if they got it, they got it, and it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah, I think that's very true. um, which this is kind of spoiling the next slide, but mono decks definitely do have a position, and the reason that we talk about B tier decks right here, I guess you could call it a cop out. I'm putting all of our mono decks in this tier because I think no matter what, if you want a consistent deck, if you want something that can perform consistently, a monocolor deck will always be a decent answer. And every single element right now, in my opinion, has a very viable build that you could run away with. So, in my opinion, Ice actually has two. And I wanted to bring it up because not only does Turbo discard aggro Ice, whatever you're going to call it, Rug Rufus, Rug Don Corneo, it doesn't matter what you're really doing in that deck. As long as you're stripping resources away from your opponent, I think you're in a very good position. If we had a limit break card that discarded a card from your opponent's hand, I feel like we would be in dire trouble because Rug is going to be a card that enables you to do very stupid things, and having some sort of discard on demand is going to be rough. So I really hope that we don't get that anytime soon. The other flavor of Ice, since we're on that topic, I guess, would be like a mono ice control. And this is something that's been creeping up I saw it a lot in some local qualifier results, but it's essentially you're running as many 2-drop ice backups as you can so that you can get to those 5 backup games. And then you're playing these busted effects that either rely on you having 5, like there's I don't even remember which Opus. Yeah, Kurosame is kind of your boss monster, but there's some other effects like that new Shinryu Celestia card. There's a Kefka. They both kind of require that you have 5 ice backups, or it may not be that they require it, but they get like exponentially better when you have 5. And then your big boss monster, of course, yes, is Kurosame. And Kurosame, dull and freezing 5 things when he enters is nuts. But then on top of that, I could choose to make you discard 5 cards. Holy shit.
Yes.
He's 7 CP, right? So yeah. I can tap my 5 backups. I can discard 1 card. I've effectively paid 2 CP to play this forward, right? Because I have had my backups set up, and let's just say that they've generated the value since I've played them. So I've effectively paid 5 backups plus 2 CP. And I'm going to make you discard the equivalent of 10 CP. That's rough. That's very rough, especially if you're playing 2-drop backups like, what is the ice one? Is it Chemist, the one that plays for free?
I think so.
We saw that guy. He played like 2 backups. I think he paid for a Chemist, and then he literally dropped 2 Chemist right behind it. So he paid 2 CP for basically 3 backups at that instant. And I was like, holy shit. And then from there on, he was able to just control the board because he had all this free CP that he could then turn into these like very hefty effects like Kurosame. Very, very interesting. I think that they definitely have the ability to perform, like we put in the slide here. But I don't know how often you're going to see something like that. I mean, it's definitely showed up in local qualifying results like I was talking about, but I haven't seen anything. Even when we were watching Swiss for Kansas, I don't remember seeing a mono ice control like that. I don't even remember seeing mono ice aggro. But I I guess let's hop back to the top for Mono Fire. So I don't know that you have seen, but because of the little bit of research I did have time to do today, looking through the local qualifying results, I did see Hunter Nance went to a local qualifier in Virginia, and he performed very well. And he took Mono Fire. He took Magissa. And I think that further proves that Magissa still can perform. It also may prove that Hunter has obviously the capabilities to make it perform. It might be one of those decks that a mediocre pilot wouldn't be able to perform as well, of course. But I do think it's a flavor of Mono Fire that can perform really well if you run up against the right matchups right now.
Yeah.
It plays vastly different to the Montleonis Mono Fire build that we're looking at. So the other aspect to that is, I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to go super deep into Magissa. It's been around for several formats now. The only big changes that it really has is like now Tyvus is a lot better.
Ward.
Yeah, Tyvus,
Package.
it just like meshes really well because he's all about 3-drops and the Magissa's all about 3-drops. And then you get like these just good synergies between the two. I think we called that out. Definitely not on video, I don't think at the time, but we definitely called that out. As soon as we saw Tyvus, we were like, holy shit, Magissa. Going back to the Montleonis build, though, this is something that's definitely played a little different because Montleonis wants you to have the 5 fire backups. It plays in a similar way, I guess, that you would want to set those backups up similar to the Mono Ice Control. But Montleonis has a huge payoff. Montleonis plays a cost 5 or less and a cost 3 or less from the break zone. And the only requirement is that they have the fire element attached to them. So he plays 4-color wool. He plays Tyvus. He plays Ward. He plays Magissa. I mean, he plays anything that's relevant that you need, right? I mean, in a situation where you're not actually playing a just hyper aggressive Magissa deck, if you are playing like a slower control setup version of it, you could play your Magissa and your Ward. And if I'm not mistaken, Ward targets a forward, not a forward your opponent controls. If it does, I'm sure there's other cards that could be substituted for this scenario. But you could play a forward that just deals Magissa the damage, and then you immediately go grab a 4th forward for your field. Because Montleonis is a body. He's going to stick to the field. Magissa, your other forward that just dealt the damage to Magissa, and then Magissa goes and grabs a 4th forward. You played 4 forwards for the cost of 8 CP, and you basically removed a fire backup. So I think that's very value oriented. I think that's very, very good. Mono Wind. I don't know how much we could really say about Mono Wind that hasn't already been said. Obviously, it performed amazing at Worlds. It still has a very prevalent toolbox of ideas that you can throw at the wall. I guess you could say at this stage, a lot of people just call it Luso.deck. I think Mono Wind has a lot more in it than just playing Luso. But there was a guy in Italy who topped with Mono Wind, and he had 3 Opus 1 Odins in there. Just a Lightning EX Burst 9. No, that's Raiden. 7-drop summon. I mean, obviously, there's implications for playing 3 Lightning cards in your deck, but it was a Mono Wind deck at heart. I definitely think that it has room to top, for sure. Then we go into Mono Earth. So I'm sure Oscar will argue that there are 2 flavors to this. I'm not as big of an Earth player, so I'm just going to call it what it is. I think that
in general, Earth has just some of the best answers to keep the meta in check right now. It has big bodies. It has break zone removal. It has summon cancellation. It has combat blanking effects. It has a lot of stuff that just outright combats what the meta is doing. My concern with Mono Earth is that it doesn't have enough to keep up with some of the larger performing decks right now. Not larger performing, but higher performing decks. So Gigawool just completely overruns Mono Earth in some scenarios with just how many effects that it has going off and how many things it's going to be able to do every turn, that Mono Earth is going to have answers for probably one of those every turn, but maybe not 2 or 3. And that's when it gets a little bit dicey, right? So if Gigawool gets set up, then Mono Earth is going to take at least a couple of turns to get set up. And once it does, it can control the game very, very well. I would say there's the version that plays the 1-drop Leo, which Will Coghill was playing it in Kansas. And I said it in that video after the Materia Cup that was still one of the most exciting matches all day long to me, was the Mono Earth, Mono Water matchup. And I think that Mono Earth build really showed the flexibility that Mono Earth has. It has a ton of answers and it has a ton of ways to deal with things. But I think my logic still stands that I don't know that it's going to have enough answers to completely stop the opponent if they're playing something like Gigawool.
I just don't think it's quick enough.
Yeah. I guess the drawback to playing Mono Earth is you have these giant bodies, but the bodies take so much to get out.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on to Mono Lightning. So this is kind of, I guess, I don't know that there's necessarily just a Mono Lightning good stuff list out there that I have seen just completely run over certain things in the meta. But I think that Mono Lightning, to me, I so far in this format have been playing a ton of Earth and Lightning, which are two elements that I have not used very much. So I've spent a lot of time in Lightning, and I feel like Lightning seems to be one of my preferred elements at this point. I like Lightning. I think that it has a lot of very interesting things that it can do. And I think that I pinged Eureka in the North American server, and I just cold called him, basically said, hey, what's your outlook on the meta right now? He brought up a deck that I have seen zero results for. And I think that it may be something that people just haven't really explored enough. And that could truthfully go for all of these monocolored decks. I don't think that they're as heavily explored as something like Gigawool, because it's been out for multiple formats now. People have played the absolute living shit out of it. I think that the answers that each one of these mono elements have are A, varied, but B, not as explored as they probably could be. And I feel like Lightning has a very interesting set of new cards that came out. And yes, this is me fanboying a little bit, but the Cat 8 stuff that came out in Lightning specifically is very, very powerful. Powerful to the point that obviously they're in some of the top performing decks right now. Gigawool with the Ice Lightning variant is heavily focused on using Adia and Seifer to control the board. That's essentially, if they're not playing things that are too big, if they're not playing at least a 9k forward every turn, then it's going to get removed with Adia. And even if you are, I'll just remove it with Seifer instead. So it's one of those things that Lightning has some very, very powerful tools right now. I just don't know that they've been explored enough to show a result. But of course, Lightning has several different archetypes within it. And we'll definitely touch on that in the Rogue tier because I have some listed there. And then last in the monocolor is Water. I am speaking completely out of my ass at this point because I don't know shit about mono water. So I'm going to rely a lot on you, Oscar, for this one. So I think mono water, I can't talk enough about the one in Kansas that Ryan Chen was playing. I think it has some very, very interesting pieces to the puzzle right now. I am very high on Siren. And I think that card, if you built around it, is just stupid good. I have seen some very interesting lists. Leon and I were actually looking at a list the other day at work. This guy played Siren, Opus 16 Seymour, the one that taps, removes 6 summons from the break zone, and deals a point of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say Chaos and Arc, maybe. There was only like 4 forwards in this entire deck, like 4 names. 3 Siren, 3 Seifer, or 3 Siren, 3 Seymour, and then like 2 other things. I can't remember at this point. But it was essentially just all summons. There was literally 30 summons in the deck, and then these 4 forwards and 15, 16, 17 backups, something like that. So
yeah,
it's very, very weird what you could do with Siren. I think that it's very cool. And I think Water is in a position where it has some of the most impactful monsters that are standalone. And I say that because I know Oscar's going to rebuttal that Earth has some extremely powerful monsters as well. I would bet that Water has monsters that I don't need to do much with, that they would just work on their own. I'm talking Tonberry, Blue Worm, Tross, Octomammoth, Hippocampus. I'm talking just, very, very interesting monsters, right? And if you built a mono water deck that focused on having these monsters that were untargetable, because no one's playing Monster Hate, and you activate them, turn them into a forward, your opponent has this tiny little window to react to them, and then you just activate Siren in response. As many monsters as you're playing in the deck, you're just going to flip over something that's not a forward, and Siren's going to protect your monster from ever being broken or ever being interacted with. I think that has room. I think that's good. Is it fast enough? No. But damn, is it good.
yeah.
So that's kind of my, take on each one of the colors. What did I miss in Earth? Because I know you probably have a lot to say about Earth. And B, what did I miss in Water? Because I know you have more to say on that.
I do think the standard unit version of Water is pretty good. You can run the mono variant as well, and then you can also run just almost kind of like the old Turbo Levy, just with some little different high count, more backups in it, and then just trying to get the free backups as well. And I think it would still do good.
Yeah.
Maybe not as efficient as the standard unit one and with monsters, but and then Mono Earth. I think it's good. It's just a little slow. It's got the best board wipes in the game, but if you're already 4 points in the damage and you have the Shintoto, they might be able to reset just faster than you. It's just one of those things that is a game changer, but you don't want to have to do it from behind. You want to do it the turn after they swarm you.
Yeah.
And it's just Mono Earth has got a lot of higher costed effects and summons and forwards, like the Gilgamesh right there. It's a great card. It costs 3 to play, but then it also costs 3 to break something, which is not bad when you set up on backups. But playing that just off the top deck with nothing, or just straight off the beginning without setting up, it's kind of hard. It's rough.
Yeah. I love this Gilgamesh, and I think that for me, I feel like he didn't need that line where it says when he enters the field or attacks. I would have felt perfectly fine and thought that he was just as good if he said when Gilgamesh attacks. Right?
Yeah.
If you have the disposable CP to just pay 6 for this guy to break something, by all means. But I don't feel like his entering to break is nearly as effective, or not effective. I don't think it's nearly as necessary as it is that he just creates this recurring break effect, very similar to Seifer. And I think there's a huge difference between Gilgamesh and Seifer, even though they have very similar baselines. They're both 3 CP. They're both 7k to begin with. They both just break something on attack. The problem is that Seifer is just so much easier to set up and to do and to consistently keep it going than Gilgamesh is. And Seifer gets the added ability to not only mill yourself, add something back, and then by milling stuff, you're adding potentially 2 forwards to the field that are going to help protect him, whereas Gilgamesh needs 5 or more backups to protect himself. So, I don't know. Very similar cards, but 2 vastly different implications right now.
Right. As far as the B tier goes, I almost feel like Mono Water could go up 1 tier, possibly, depending on if you're playing the right Mono Water. And the, like I said, the Aggro Ice discard, just because if you're playing against it and it has the right stuff, you're not going to stand a chance. It just does what it does good.
Yeah. I could see that argument.
And then as for B tier, which I don't know what you got on the next one because this is all a surprise for me, I feel like a deck that could be on the B tier would be 13, because it doesn't got any worse. It hasn't got any worse. It's still good, and it can overwhelm you as well.
Right.
So I think that would probably deserve a spot here with the B tier, because everybody hates to sit down and then see 13 come out and you're like, damn. You know how to deal with it because we've dealt with it in the last formats because it was the boogeyman.
Right.
And a lot of the same summons and abilities that take care of the knights and take care of all the main S tier decks will also take care of 13.
Right.
I just think it's still a good deck though.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of which, going to our rogue tier. Sorry, you were going to say something at the end there.
Oh no, that's good.
Yeah, so rogue tier definitely. I still think these decks have a very strong potential to win. I just don't see them being as heavily played in the room. And the reason that I've actually put 13 here is for all the reasons that you just said. Answers are nice, but not something that you have to tech for. I think 13 gets hit the hardest by that statement, because the answers, like you just said, that you're playing for knights really hurt 13. The answers that you're basically playing to stop most of the decks in the top S tier, you are also going to be hurting 13. I think 13 suffers from the same issue with, like, Mono Earth can just play giant guys. I think those giant guys, especially the ones like we were just talking about Gilgamesh, you talk about Galuf, you talk about these guys that have some sort of reoccurring ability to outright break something. And for what it's worth, Galuf, obviously he's going to deal damage to it, but you're going to be able to manipulate the situation to just outright break it either way. I think it falls hard to that type of stuff. And I think that's why I don't expect to see it in the room. One interesting thing I did find when I was looking through the local qualifier results was Fire Ice 13 made an appearance. Yeah. I'll give you 2 guesses as to who played it. So, I definitely did forget to put something in this list. And if people have already clicked off because I never mentioned it, sorry, but I think I would consider it a rogue tier deck. And I haven't mentioned it till now because of that. I thought about it when we were in like A tier. I think Monsters deserves rogue tier status.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's not going to show up as much as you would have to tech for it. But I think that it's nice if you have some overlap with, something else. Gilgamesh is a perfect example of that. Gilgamesh breaks a forward or monster. So something that can deal with both is very good, obviously. So I personally feel like Monsters deserves to be in rogue tier. I think it's one of those that a very good pilot takes it a very long way, truthfully. I don't think I could take Tori Kelly's list and do what he does with it. I just don't.
Yeah.
And this list, by the way, is by no means exhaustive for the rogue tier because I think we are still at a very solid position in Final Fantasy TCG's history where it's a very wide open format. Yes, there are heavily preferred decks that are going to be showing up, but it very much feels like a lot of times what ends up, especially last year in 2023, what especially felt big was that one off deck that kind of scooted through Swiss and made it into Top Cut. That rogue tier deck that nobody fucking really realized they needed to tech for and they didn't really have answers for, it squeezed in and like got a fucking win, I still feel like these rogue tier decks are solid picks. They're just stuff that you should consider if you don't like playing anything that we've talked about up until now. I have Dragoons on this list. Dragoons hasn't gotten much in terms of their toolkit. They did get a new backup in Opus 22, which is cool. But I still think they have a very aggressive stance. They can shit out a ton of forwards, and those forwards get really big sometimes, and a lot of them will end up having haste. Yes. And, by the way, for what it's worth, Barbara gives all card name Dragoon and job Dragoon haste. That's backups as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So 13, of course, yeah, we already kind of talked about it. I don't think it got much new toys to play with in the last 2 sets, really. It hasn't gotten much in 20 or 22. It obviously was the big bad for the entirety of Opus 19, and I still think that it can scoot under the table in a lot of situations and really take over a match if you're not careful.
Yes.
Scions is kind of in the same boat for me. I still don't fully know which version of Scions I truly like more. I think Fire Lightning kind of has
the most, probably the most prevalence right now. I would say just because it can shit out some forwards and it has access to Heen and Xenos and all this other stuff that just creates a lot of advantage, and it's a lot of aggressive advantage. I think that's probably the way to take it. Fire Lightning Stoll is fucking good. Opus 16 Stoll is fucking good. All these cards are very, very powerful if you sit down across from the right chair, you know?
Yeah.
Storm in multiple different flavors here. I put Wind/X, whether you're talking Wind Earth. Ghoul has obviously been playing that a lot lately, whether you're talking Wind Ice. I think that's still very powerful. I think that Wind Ice has a lot of niche tech answers that overlap a lot of different things. Like if you look at Sid Haze, if you look at Lock in general, both of those have very big potential to dull and freeze multiple things, but Lock in particular has access to destroying big guys, like he does a 6 or more, I believe, so that helps take out your Gigawol, helps take out your Chaos. And then it also has access to monster destruction and stuff like that, so I think Ice Wind Storm is very good. Earth Wind Storm. I'm also a huge fan of retainers. So I think that they are very good in and of themselves. I know Ghoul has way more experience, so I'm not gonna try to trump any of his advice. I'd go listen to him if you're interested in that. I put Sky Pirates on here because I wanted to hear you squeal like a little girl. I think that Sky Pirates are good. I think they have enough versions of their names that you could stick a version of the deck together specifically geared to the meta. I think that there's a Vaughn that prefers to play a slower meta. I think there's a Vaughn that prefers to be aggressive. I think that in general, there's different ways to take Sky Pirates, and I guess in a broader sense, you could branch out and say Category 12, just because if you really wanted to play the slow game, you have access to like the Headhunters and stuff like that. I think those have very interesting implications, and the fact that Fran just generates so much value. Like, she's so good. So I think that Sky Pirates are definitely a rogue deck that you could see doing something.
Yeah, definitely.
And then since I gave you the little nugget of Sky Pirates, I had to put one for myself. I would say that Category 8 Turbo, and this is specifically like Ice Lightning, Don Corneo, Rug, mill out Seifer, Fujin, and Raijin, and have a ton of options turn one. Like, Knights, the reason that Knights, in my opinion, is so good right now is because turn one, if I draw the nuts, I draw Ramza, Karilla, I ditch X amount of cards, including Karilla, to play Ramza. Ramza brings back Karilla. Karilla reveals 5. Play 2 extra forwards onto the field. I just put 4 forwards onto the field. Good. They don't have haste. That sucks. If you could find a way to give them haste, you're better off, in my opinion. But because you don't, you kind of have 4 bodies on the board that if your opponent doesn't answer literally their next turn, they're going to take 4 damage. You're going to be able to tap them down during their turn to respond to any forward that they try to play to stop you, and they will, from there, slowly take over the game. If you can't shit out multiple forwards against Knights, they're just going to have better board presence. Category 8 Turbo does the same thing, except it does have haste for every single instance that you have Rug, Dawn, and then you mill Fujin, Raijin. I now have haste on all 4 of my forwards because Don Corneo has milled 15 and shit out 2 extra forwards for free. And
Because of that, I can now put 4 damage on the board turn 1. Now you have to have an answer that turn or you lose, right? I think Category 8 Turbo has the speed. It just doesn't have as consistent speed that Knights does. I think that's where Knights kind of gains its credence there. I think that it's got a little bit more consistency to it, and consistency is never bad. And then, I guess, like we said at the beginning of this slide, monsters, just in general, Tori Kelly has obviously proven that monsters have the capability to top, to win, to take all the way. Oscar himself has proven that they have the ability to top and to take it all the way. The difference is that monsters are so hard to interact with that it's kind of like playing solitaire, in my opinion. I'm definitely not the monster player between the two of us, but in my opinion, it's like playing solitaire. But I think that monsters have so many toolbox pieces that they could create a deck similar to Sky Pirates in this scenario. They can create a board state that prevents the opponent from doing what they want to do. But like I said, I'm not the expert here, so why are monsters so good?
Monsters are so good because they're not really affected by any of the summons that are out. If you're going to run a summon to counter a monster, you're going to only play out of the 100 people that you play at the tournament, maybe 5 will have monsters. You know?
Yeah.
So why would you run any monster hate for maybe the 5 of 100 decks that you see out there?
Yeah.
You're not going to. And I think that's why monsters can sneak on by through the rounds and go the distance, just because nobody's ready for them. And as far as like board wipes, monsters aren't really affected by board wipes. Yeah, you do have some forwards that are on the board, but you're willing to sacrifice those. Like in the monster deck that I run, I literally run probably 15 board wipes altogether.
Yeah.
I would say. I know a bunch of those are duplicate cards, but I have those just for every occasion that you want to go wide. Okay. I'll board wipe you, and then we'll reestablish. And I can do it again, and then again, until I'm ready to go for game.
Yeah.
That's how I play my monsters. There's other versions. I think like Tori Kelly's, I feel like it's a monster forward variant, more or less. They just kind of counter, like they sync together and work very good together. But the one I run, basically, I would say it's more of a pure monster deck. Not 100% pure, but mostly focused around monsters solely.
Yeah. Your end game is having 7 monsters that are going to deal 7 points of damage.
Right, correct. And with monsters, I can sit there and go to damage 3 or 4, no problem, and turn around and win the game. And then, out of all the matches that I've played, it's really fun and amazing, because just to get the expression off the people that you're playing against, and they're like, "What the hell did I just play?
Yeah.
Why?" They're like, "Are you kidding me?" And then they can literally sit there and do nothing about it. I remember playing the FF6 guy in the Winter Cup, and he was just like, "Go ahead, yeah, you got it. Do whatever you want." You know, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Board wipe, yeah, there you go. There's another one.
Yeah.
And then, like, I board wiped 13 probably 3 times in one of the Winter Cup games. It's just, it can do it, and you can live through it.
Yeah.
I think it's a resilient, kind of like Earth is.
And speaking of which, FF6 should be on this list, in my opinion.
Yes, FF6 should be on this list.
And unfortunately, I think the Rogue tier list it turns into a catch-all. It's everything, right?
Yeah, I do believe so. Like, and I was, me and Ryan were talking previously, and I felt like Leo was in a good spot in the meta to be played just because you have access to your limit breaks to get the numbers that you need. I'm not going to play it because I'm just too comfortable with the deck that I play now. But I feel like somebody out there that can pilot it will go a long ways with Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have access to a lot of stuff, whether you play a mono water version of it, you play an earth water version, you play a wind water version. There's just so many options there between the Titus 5 drop with the what is it, Una and the Titus,
Mm-hmm.
or, and then also there's Yuri into Chalinka, and then that's your 5 and 2. Then you got Seraphophail if you're going to play the Warrior Light standard unit guy and the 4-color wolves, so that'll color fix you as well. Pulling a 4-color wool and the 4-drop standard unit Warrior Light. Play him. That's your 6, your 4. Off of him, you'll grab a 3, and if you have Realm, that'll grab your 5-2-1. Also, if you're playing the Wind version, same scenario. Yuri will bring you Yuri from your extra deck. Play the Chalinka, that's your 5-2. You just got to find your 1.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the water. You know, Una and Titus. There's a lot of options there now. And as we get more cards, it's gonna open it up a whole lot more when you get more limit break cards
Yeah,
that
for
do
sure.
more things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like it's in a decent spot. And as of right now, nobody would be expecting it. It would be one of those decks that you sit across from and you're like, okay, until you start seeing what they're actually going to be dumping. It just has that element of surprise.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they're set up. And you can't come back from that. If they've got it, you can't come back.
Yeah.
It is very hard. Anything else you think goes on here? I know it's everything, but
I can't think of anything at this point. I really, this was probably the slide that I spent the most time on.
right.
Because I think everything that's kind of topped at Kansas, that topped in what was it, Italy, that's topped in some of the Masters tournaments that they've had in Japan. I've tried to evaluate those decks, and I feel like if you looked at how often you're going to see them in the room, that's why they were where they were. And then these were the decks that I could think of that I know would perform well. It's just you're not gonna see them. These are probably some of the decks that I would be looking to play, right? Because they're gonna go unnoticed. They're gonna go unchecked for a lot of it. And is it something that you have, the ability to take all the way? Very possibly. But it just depends on what tech pieces you put in for the S tier decks, the A tier decks, the B tier decks, right? So I can't think of anything else.
Warriors of Darkness.
Leon brought that up today, and I feel like it deserves to be somewhere. If I put it somewhere personally, it would be a rogue tier.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think that it's got a really good top end, but it's got a really low bottom end too. Like, it struggles if I am Mott or Levy the Knocked, I feel like I kind of just win. Right? I mean, you at worst turn 1 just ditched 5 cards to play the Knocked, and now you don't get anything in return. Yeah, I feel like that's a big issue.
That's why we run the Magic Pot variant, boys.
Yeah. So, yeah. Last slide. What did we miss? Because with a format that's as open as it is, I feel like there's not a solid answer to everything.
but I feel like there's so many answers to so much that I for sure know we missed something. Like I said at the beginning, I did try to take as much time as I could today at work to work on some research and some stuff like this. I didn't even get a chance to show Leon before I left work, which was unfortunate. But either way, I would like to know from Oscar first. What did we miss? Did we miss anything?
Not that I know of that we can think of, but I'm sure we missed something. We missed seven CP wool last time.
And I damn sure made we didn't miss it this time. So
yes.
I guess so. To the viewer, what did we miss? What deck is it that you think is going to take it all the way? Is it going to be a rogue tier deck? Is it something that everybody's overlooking at the moment? What is it that we need to shake up the format? Is it an Earth Ice control list? Is it some sort of mono lightning list that what was that list we were talking about the other day? Kadaj with the new promo Zach,
Yes.
just some nutty stuff. Like, what is it that we, and I mean collectively as a community, are missing? What is the thing that is going to blow Florida wide open? What is going to blow Chicago wide open?
We're missing some samurai, of course. So we can play samurais again and play Motley on this.
I should have screenshotted it, but there was a conversation the other day in the North American Discord server where somebody was trying to talk about Tenzin. And a lot of the rebuttal to Tenzin was it came out. Is it Opus 10? Is it an Opus 10 or an Opus 11? Somewhere around there?
It's back. Yeah, it's way back there.
Yeah, it's a card that at the time when it was released was so impactful to Samurais. It made Samurais one of the best decks, period. But that was at least 10 sets ago. And it definitely has some power creep at this point. Like, it's been power crept to a point where it's good, but there's too many answers to answer it before it runs away. And
yeah, if it ever gets set up, it's hard to beat, but
yeah,
it won't have time to set up.
And I think that's a very interesting look at the entirety of the game right now. Is there are so many decks that if they get set up, they can run away with the game. There are so many archetypes in this game that if they do establish their win condition, there's very little that's going to take it away from them. It's just a matter of how quickly can I get to my win condition. Did you by chance listen to those videos, by the way?
I did.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up about those videos was he was talking about, and by the way, we're referencing Kyle Peters recommended some videos in his KP Talks video from a Magic player, which Oscar and I never played Magic. He talks about analyzing a format, analyzing a meta, and determining how to combat the meta. And one of the things that he talks about in this video in particular is if the meta right now is focused on winning on turn 4, to beat the meta, you've either got to A, win by turn 3, or B, stop them from winning by turn 4. That's kind of like the two big things. And there's obviously branching scenarios to how to accomplish both things, right? So I think at this point, if you are playing a deck, aka a rogue deck, that needs to set up what are the answers that you're playing to the S tier decks that allow you to stop them
from winning on turn. I'd say most of this format feels like a turn 3 meta. It feels like by turn 3 the games are usually decided, because if Knights plays out turn 1 perfectly, they're going to win on turn 3. If Gigawall reveals perfectly, they're going to win on turn 3. I feel like we're in a 3-turn format. So you have to have answers in your Rogue Tier deck that are going to, A, either win on turn 2, aka Category 8 Turbo, or you're going to have something to stop them from winning on turn 3, aka Storm. Right? You're going to have something that is going to slow them down. If you can't win by turn 3, you're going to have to slow them down. So I found that so interesting. And he had multiple other points. Talking about being bigger than your opponent, being able to just scoot underneath them, stuff like that, I think creates a topic for a different video at this point. But I find it generically good advice that if we're in a turn 3 format, what is your deck doing to win on turn 2 or stop the opposing deck from winning on turn 3? And go back and look, right? S tier. All Gigawall and Knights are going to do is win by turn 3. Refia Control is going to stop them. How does it stop them? It plays a high number of EX bursts. Impactful EX bursts, right? It plays fucking 6 CP Levy, which is backbreaking to Gigawall. It plays... If they're not playing Brynhilder at this point, I feel like Brynhilder's a fantastic option because that helps stop Knights. Most of the Knights are going to be right around that 5,000 mark. And then that gets into some like meta knowledge or meta checks that you could do to play like Ovelia to increase your blah, blah, blah. But I think in general, you're around that 5,000 mark. So playing generically good EX bursts that are going to just check the aggression that you're picking up from 7 CP Wall or from Gorilla based boards, you're gonna be okay. A tier. How does Chaos Arc slow them down? It just straight up steals their shit, right? It just takes it from them. It has Arc, which just outright just A, board denial. B, resource denial. It's big. It takes it away. Ice Lightning, how does it do it? It controls the resources. It either dole and freezes everything they have on board so that they, A, can't attack, B, can't pay for anything with backups. Or it's just going to strip them of their resources by taking it out of their hand. How does Soiree do it? Very similar to how Refia Control does it. It does it based on EX bursts, just a different set. B tier, how do these deal with it? All of the mono decks have specific answers that could be checking everything. They all have insanely valuable forwards. Levy. Playing Levy for freaking 3 CP off of Lena is busted. That's stupid good. He returns a monster, a forward, a backup, and then reduces 3 things by 9k. I'm remembering that right, correct?
Yes.
Motley Onus. Insane amount of value. We talked about it earlier. That'd be up to 4 forwards in some scenarios that you're basically getting out onto the field for 8 CP. You're effectively paying 2 CP on average per forward, and you've gotten an 8 cost, a 5 cost, a 3 cost, and probably something else. That's, even if you're paying it, that's on average just shy of a little over 3 CP per forward. No, less than 3 CP per forward. If you're only getting the 3 out of it. Either way, that's big. Mono Earth, same thing. Has so many control elements that it just checks the other decks in a very meaningful way. So if you're in this rogue tier, what are your options to win by turn 2 or prevent them from winning by turn 2? What are you doing?
Ixion.
There you go. There you go.
For those 3 in the picture, Ixion.
Yes. And I think that damn, I didn't even pick up that I put literally 3 lightning based decks on there. I told you I'm in a lightning kind of mode right now. So I think that that's my big takeaway going into Florida. That's what I would be questioning every single competitor that I talk to is what are you doing to win by turn 2 or stop them from winning by turn 3?
Oh, yeah. I think that sums it up.
So, again, we'll ask, what did we miss? Let us know down in the comments below. I don't know how long we've been recording at this point since my presentation is in full screen, but I appreciate you hanging out and listening, especially if you've listened this long. And if you are competing at Florida, I wish you the best of luck. I am excited to see some rogue decks perform well. I always love the fact that this game has such an open format. It's a fucking daunting task to plan for Chicago with such an open format, but it's so nice that I could play whatever the fuck I wanted to. I like that. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's all I have. I don't know if Oscar, if you have anything else.
I think that sums it up.
Right.
As of right now until this weekend.
So
tell us different.
My current plan, at least on the channel, this is going to go up on Friday before the Materia Cup. We will have a video coming out on Monday that's just a conclusion to a best of 3 that we played. And then hopefully by Wednesday we can put out our afterthoughts of Florida and whatever we end up seeing in Florida. But yeah, so until then, best of luck to everybody competing, and hope everyone has an enjoyable experience watching. That's all I got. Bye.